What happens when an arrogant admiral underestimates the quiet determination of a female soldier? He thought he had her number, that her presence was a mistake. But the moment her highly trained, formidable team arrived, his entire perception, and perhaps his career, was about to be turned upside down. Get ready for an epic confrontation that proves appearances can be deceiving, and true power often comes from the most unexpected places. There are moments in life when everything you fought for hangs in the balance, when every sacrifice, every scar, every sleepless night comes down to a single second of judgment. Captain Maya Reeves had survived 3 tours in the most hostile war zones on Earth, but nothing had prepared her for the humiliation she was about to face in a room full of decorated officers who thought they already knew her story. What they didn't know was that the quiet woman standing before them had led one of the most classified and dangerous operations in modern military history. And the truth was about to walk through that door. The conference room at the Pentagon was suffocating, thick with tension and the bitter scent of old coffee. Maya stood at attention, her uniform crisp, her posture perfect, but inside, her heart pounded like a war drum. Admiral Garrison sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his silver hair gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, his eyes cold and dismissive as they swept over her. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "Captain Reeves," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "I've read your file. Impressive on paper, I'll give you that. But let's be honest here. Leading a combat unit in the sandbox is one thing. Command at this level? That's a different beast entirely." The other officers shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Maya's jaw tightened, but she held her tongue, her eyes fixed on a point just above the Admiral's head. She'd been through hell and back, lost brothers and sisters in arms, carried wounded soldiers through minefields under enemy fire, and made decisions that haunted her dreams. Yet here she was, being reduced to a checkbox, a diversity hire, a token. You'd think after everything respect would be a given. But some battles, it seemed, never really end. Garrison continued, flipping through her file with theatrical disinterest. "I see here you were part of Task Force Shadow. Covert operations, high-risk extractions. Sounds exciting." He closed the folder with a snap. "But covert work is easy when you're hiding in the shadows. Real leadership happens in the light, Captain, where everyone can see if you crack under pressure." The words stung more than any shrapnel ever had. Maya felt the heat rising in her chest, the familiar burn of anger mixed with something deeper, something rawer. She thought about the nights she'd held dying soldiers in her arms, whispering promises she couldn't keep, the weight of dog tags in her pocket that didn't belong to her. She thought about the mission in Kandahar, the one that never made the reports, where she and her team had walked into an ambush meant to kill them all, and somehow, through sheer will and blood, they'd made it out. But how do you explain that kind of bond to someone who's never felt it? How do you make them understand that leadership isn't about the light or the shadows? It's about the people who follow you into the dark because they trust you'll bring them home. Just as Garrison opened his mouth to continue his lecture, the door at the far end of the room swung open with a force that made everyone turn. The first to enter was Sergeant Marcus Bull Daniels, 6'4" of solid muscle, his face a roadmap of scars, his presence filling the room like a thunderstorm. Behind him came Lieutenant Sophia Chen, small and fierce, her eyes sharp as blades, followed by Corporal James Spoon Walker, whose easy smile hid the fact that he was one of the deadliest snipers in the Army. One by one, they filed in, 12 soldiers in total, each one a living testament to hell survived and battles won. They moved with the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from years of combat, their uniforms adorned with medals and ribbons that told stories most people couldn't imagine. And they all positioned themselves behind Maya, a silent wall of loyalty and steel. The room went dead quiet, the kind of silence that feels like the whole world is holding its breath. Bull stepped forward, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "Admiral Garrison, sir. Sergeant Marcus Daniels, Task Force Shadow. I don't know what you've been reading in that file, but let me tell you what it doesn't say." He paused, his eyes never leaving the Admiral's face. "Captain Reeves didn't just lead us through missions. She walked into hell with us. When we were pinned down in Helmand Province, surrounded, outgunned, and bleeding out, it wasn't some distant commander barking orders from a bunker. It was her, crawling through dirt and fire, dragging wounded soldiers to cover while bullets tore the air around her. She took a round to the shoulder and didn't stop moving until every single one of us was accounted for. Sophia stepped forward next, her voice steady but edged with emotion. In Mosul, we lost comms. No air support, no backup, and an entire enemy battalion between us and extraction. She made the call to split the team, drew the fire on herself so the rest of us could complete the mission. We thought we'd lost her. When we found her 3 days later, she was barely conscious, half-starved, but she'd kept the intel safe. She kept us safe. One by one, they spoke, each story more harrowing than the last. Spoon talked about the night Maya stayed awake for 48 hours straight, monitoring enemy movements, because she refused to risk anyone's life on a bad call. Another soldier, a young medic named Torres, described how Maya had held him together mentally after his first kill, sitting with him in the dark, sharing her own demons so he wouldn't feel alone. They didn't just describe a leader, they painted a portrait of someone who had earned every ounce of their loyalty through sacrifice, courage, and an unbreakable commitment to bringing her people home. The Admiral's smirk had long since vanished, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. The other officers at the table were leaning forward now, hanging on every word, their expressions shifting from skepticism to awe. Maya stood there, tears burning at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd cried enough in the dark. This moment was for something else. When the last soldier finished speaking, Bull turned to Maya, his expression softening in a way that seemed impossible for someone so hardened by war. Captain Reeves didn't ask us to be here today. She probably didn't even want us to come, but we're here because when it mattered most, she was there for us. Every single time. He looked back at Garrison, and this time, there was no anger in his voice, just truth. You want to know about leadership, Admiral? It's not about the light or the shadows. It's about the people who'd walk into fire for you because they know you'd do the same. That's Maya Reeves. And if you can't see that, then maybe you're not looking hard enough. The silence that followed was different now, heavy with understanding and respect. Admiral Garrison sat back in his chair, his hands folded on the table, and for a long moment he just looked at Maya. Then he stood, slowly, and extended his hand. "Captain Reeves," he said quietly, "I was wrong. Your team just gave the best briefing I've heard in 20 years. Maya shook his hand, her grip firm, her voice steady. "They're not just my team, sir. They're my family." As they left the Pentagon that evening, the sun setting in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Bull threw an arm around Maya's shoulders. "You know you're stuck with us forever now, right?" Maya laughed, the sound genuine and free, the weight on her chest finally lifting. "I wouldn't have it any other way. Because in the end, rank and medals and titles fade, but the bonds forged in fire, the family you choose in the crucible of war, that's what lasts. And that's what makes you unstoppable."